तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It is a difficult but not impossible problem to understand the origin of creation, for a very simple reason that when you discuss something that someone else has produced, you have no idea how it was done, why it was done, or if it was done at all. However, you want to come here? Please. Please come. Come. Whatever this creation may be, it is something that happens at different levels on different time scales and when you look into this aspect of it, you suddenly realize something very beautiful. Maybe God created the world a few billion years ago. Possible. But that is not within our direct reach, and therefore it becomes speculative, subject to a belief system, and therefore controversial. There is another type of creation, that is your date of birth. When you came into being, even this seems to be a bit difficult, except by transference. You look at a baby being born, and you look at how that baby grows up, and sort of work out a psychological theory or a biological theory about it. And then there is yet another creation of which it is possible to become directly and immediately aware of. And that is the creation that takes place every morning. What happens every morning happens in the beginning of every lifetime, and happens in the beginning of the lifetime of a so-called universe, and heaven knows what else. This is all we are conscious of. We are conscious of a little cycle called day and night, and we are conscious of a little cycle called birth and death, and we are merely suggesting that maybe the other thing is also similar to this. And therefore this question of creation and the arising of objects and the consequent relationship that seems to come into being is of immediate concern to us. This is something elementary. There are quite a few girls here. You cannot give birth, I suggest, to a rock or a piece of tape recorder. Why so? A human being must give birth to a human being. So if God created the world, everything in it must be divine. In Yoga-Vasistha, they don't use the word God in connection with creation. Another word is used. In order completely and totally to avoid anthropomorphic suggestions, the word consciousness is used. In ordinary religious thought, wherever you find this, you use the word God or its equivalents in other languages, and somehow, in spite of all the discussions we have had so far, somehow we are committed to using the word He in connection with that God, and then you start saying, no, you should not make it a human-like figure. You use the word He. Thus, planting the seed of mischief, first of all, and then you say, no, you should not think of God as something anthropomorphic, but He is. You see the difficulty here? So they said, come on, forget it. Use the word infinite, use the word consciousness, and therefore you don't get into this he, she, it struggle. Eh? The same thing is true in the case of consciousness. Consciousness cannot create unconsciousness. Consciousness cannot even become conscious of something unconscious. Consciousness cannot come into contact with unconsciousness. Consciousness cannot grasp unconsciousness. Consciousness cannot comprehend unconsciousness. But you think you can. It's a funny thing, isn't it? It's a very funny thing. Here is a glass of orange juice. There are several ways of coming into contact with it. The genuine way, I'll show you in a minute, but the non-genuine way is this. I cannot taste it. Why is it so? The finger is not the proper taster. The faculty built into the finger is only one of touch. It can touch that thing, not taste it. The taste buds respond to the taste quantum in the orange juice. Taste responds to taste. Sight responds to light. They are of the same nature. So, consciousness cannot become conscious of something which is not consciousness. But consciousness being consciousness can think it is unconscious. Just as you can play the role of a boy, he can play the role of a girl. We used to do that when we were young. Girls were not allowed to go on stage and mix with boys, even play the roles of husband, wife, and adultery. So boys used to dress themselves as girls and play the roles of kings and queens and all the rest of it. So consciousness, being consciousness, can play the role of unconsciousness, can think it is temporarily unconscious without losing its consciousness. In other words, you sleep. A highly intelligent being, a very conscious being, can sleep. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras suggests that sleep is a state in which, I am oversimplifying it, in which you think of nothing. You think you are not thinking. Abhava pratyaya alambana. Abhava pratyaya means the concept of nothingness prevails. The concept of nothingness prevails in an intelligent being, so that you do not lose your intelligence when you wake up. Correct? If some sort of lobotomy is performed on you and a bit of brain stuff is taken away, that stuff is lost. That faculty is lost. But though the whole thing is lost in sleep, when you wake up, the whole thing wakes up. Which means whatever you means thought of nothingness. You entertain the concept of nothing, and therefore you are able to sleep. Even when there is light and the room is illumined and sun is shining, I put on an eye mask and I see only darkness. It does not mean that I become blind, but I have put on an eye mask, and therefore I have blotted out all light. So, consciousness itself puts on the mask of unconsciousness and sleeps. What happens in the beginning? God created heaven and earth. What happens in the beginning? What happens when you are born? And what happens this morning? All three are of the same nature. Different only because of a certain frame of reference. What I am suggesting is similar to the biologist's contention that 1 year in the life of a dog is equal to 7 human years. What does it mean? Does it mean anything to you? I have never understood this. If the dog also had a nice watch and a calendar, it would also be tearing only 365 or 366 pages. It wouldn't take off 7 times that. If the dog were able to speak, or let us say you have trained the dog to go to church, let's take this as an example. You have trained the dog to go to the church with you or every Sunday morning. Does it go every day, or does it go once in 7 days as you do? It goes once in 7 days as you do. But does it mean that the dog thinks it goes to the church once in 49 days? So, I don't know. I don't pretend to understand this. But I am leaning upon this theory to find meaning to the other theory. That in the same way it is possible that this creation which happens every morning is similar to the creation of a child, a baby, and the creation of the world, universe, maybe other things. Pure consciousness, by thinking that it is unconsciousness, creates a thing called mind space, a space within itself. Pure consciousness in Yoga-Vasistha and other literature is called Chit. Chidakasha. The space of pure consciousness in which there is no diversity, there is no division, nothing. When a thought arises, space arises along with the thought. I brought this book just to read out the title to you. It's very beautiful, though a bit pedantic. The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, Julian Jaynes. Very, very well written. He suggests that in his case, consciousness means thought. Consciousness means consciousness of the other. He suggests that once upon a time, when we were all called some sorts of gods and goddesses, I guess, the god was your right brain, what the mystics might call intuitive understanding, and this right brain communicated with the left brain and action took place without the intervention of thought or the analog I or the ego. I'll tell you a story which explains that. And then he thinks that these statues and so on, they spoke to the prophets at that bicameral stage. And when that thing broke down, or it might not have broken down, something else might have happened. How did it break down? I don't think he explains very clearly, except to say that at that time the action was spontaneous, that is, without thought interference. The action was what you would call gut level, now we call it reaction. And then he goes on to explain that in Greek legends and epics, the word used for self is merely, it refers to the heart, the lungs, the guts, and that people reacted from there without thought. At that point, says Vasistha, something was awake in you. Even while you are asleep, something is awake in you. Consciousness is there, right? Consciousness is there, and the potentiality of individuation is also there. Another simple fact is when you make it sound philosophical, it's confusing. If the potentiality of conception is not there, you won't conceive, correct? That's all. The potentiality of conception is there when men and women come together, and it is that becomes a baby. The potentiality happens only sometimes and doesn't happen at other times. Okay, that's quite clear. That is called Bija Jagrat. Consciousness, universally present, always infinitely there, but without the division of I and you, where all of us Even that consciousness of all of us was not there. Without thought, without ego interference, there is gut level action. It's not even a reaction. As simple as when you suddenly flash a brilliant light on her face, the eyes close. The eyes don't like the glare and the eyes close. There is no thought, there is no ego there, nothing. So, why is it so? You don't have to bring in all that instinctive behavior and all the rest of it. It's pure sensory consciousness mechanism. That is the consciousness that is built into all, everywhere, throughout the world, throughout the universe. Every atom of existence has this intelligence built into it. This is what you find the first thing in the morning. There is stirring of consciousness, just amorphous stirring of consciousness. There is no I, there is nothing. And it is quite possible that you feel a bit chill and you pull the blanket over. It's possible that you feel you must turn over your side, turn over your side. Nothing. There is no sense of I am doing this. But yet something is being done. Here, it's terribly important to understand this phenomenon, that doing does not need the motivation of thought. Thought itself is a doing on its own, in its own right, on its own level, in its own dimension, in its own space. But thought does not have to direct your actions. Even so, according to latest medical theories, it is the baby that kicks itself out of the mother. Previously they thought that the mother decides when to expel the baby. Now they have come to the understanding that it is the baby who says, hey, it's time, come on, switch on, go to the nursing home, quick. That's the latest discovery. So that even what may be regarded as a mindless fetus knows how to get out of that place. That is life. That is life. Total life. Unpolluted life, uncontaminated life, unperverted life, unloaded life, uncomplicated life. I think we all recognize this, though somehow the recognition stops at a certain point. Here you have all the napkins and diapers and all the rest of it, but in India you don't have. She's got a nice lovely sari. If she picks up a little baby and holds it, and if it does something now quite natural, she doesn't get offended with the baby. Why so? The baby does what is natural. You may be doing similar thing. You may be feeding the baby, and the baby might the whole thing might be drooling over. You protect yourself, but you don't blame the baby for soiling your beautiful dress. Why? Because you realize it is not an egoistic action, it is not an action that has been prompted by thought, but it is pure action. An action that is pure, an action that is not, that has no motive whatsoever. An action that is not backed by the ego. The ego is not there. This state prevails even in our case for a blissful few moments after you wake up every morning. But on account of training, toilet training, we wake up fairly quickly. Bija Jagrat, then Jagrat. Something is stirring, something has got up, waken up. You are still not in a fully waking consciousness, it is just waking up. The consciousness is becoming aware of another. And in this case, the another is yourself. Your body and the bed. It's very beautiful if you observe this. And it is very beautiful, again, to observe the little baby. It is not aware of itself as an ego, as a self, as a personality, but it may still be conscious of this, of this. It may even cry if you take the little toy away from the child. Even the body seems to be the other. Even the body seems to be the other. The self has not yet arisen. Then, a little further on, there is Mahajagrat. You are wide awake. And when you are wide awake, this is I, this is you, this is he, this is she. The world is coming to be. Or, whatever there was has been encompassed by thought. You didn't create all this, but you have created something else along with it. Mahajagrat. It is in that state of Mahajagrat or great wakefulness that I and you are created. I and the universe are created. And from there is very quick and rapid downfall. The Yoga-Vasistha illustrates this with a story. I suppose by now you know that all playable plays or commercially successful plays or good piece of literature must contain the hero, a villain and a heroine. Without these three there is no play. The hero must have a villain to deal with. And that's what the religious people adopted. They call them gods and demons. Who is a demon? One is demon to the other. There were these gods and demons, gods living in heaven and the demons living in hell. There was a demon called Sambara. And the Sambara used to harass the gods. The gods were always harassed. They were always miserable, always restless, always terrified, always fearful, and I don't know why they were called gods. Fear of losing their position, fear of losing, I am much better. They are always frightened. Once, when the Sambara was not in town, he had built